to season 2 of the Cyber Queens. We are back in action. It's exciting. I'm super happy to be here, super pumped. Because this is a new season and we have lovely new co-hosts, we're going to reintroduce ourselves. So my name is Meryl Vernon. I am your Cybersecurity Woman of the Year, Hacker of the Year, and also Cyber Queens is now an award-winning podcast. Yay for us. That was exciting. I am your resident offensive and pen testing expert, so I have an offensive security background. And this season and forevermore, I'm going to be joined by the lovely Stacey Champagne. Stacey, please tell the good people all about yourself.
Hey, everybody. I am so excited to be here. My name is Stacey Champagne. I am the founder and CEO of Hacker and Heels, a company on a mission to help women launch and grow their cybersecurity careers at all levels. I have about 10 years of experience in cybersecurity, primarily focused on insider threat and incident response. The Cyber Queens podcast, I've been a listener, a fan, a guest previously, and I'm so excited now to be one of your co-hosts.
It's very exciting, yeah. So we had Stacey on an episode of Cyber Queens last year in June. She had me as a guest mentor for Hackers and Heels, and then we decided we should just be business best friends forever. So that's what we have now. So now you've got your red team perspective, and we've got the blue team perspective, which is exciting. And in case you hadn't heard, this year we are organizing the Cyber Queens content by quarter. So this quarter is Get Hired and kind of all things getting hired, applying, job searching things. And I could not have thought of a better person to help us discuss this topic than CEO of Tyro Security, Mr. Kris Rides. Kris, welcome to the Cyber Queens. We're happy to have you. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here. And I'm guest number 1 on season 2. I'm loving this. Thank you. And hiring is completely my baby. So I appreciate this. So I'm Kris Rides, started Tyro Security 12 years ago now, and it's a cybersecurity staffing and professional services firm. So we do have an arm that do professional services, pen testing, that sort of stuff. My background's tech recruitment. So I've been in tech recruitment 25 years, probably tell from the accent. I originally started over in the UK. I'm from London originally, not Australia, as many people seem to think.
Myth number 1 already busted. There we go.
There we go. Not Australian. G'day, mate. No, don't do it, Kris. I do like barbecues though, so maybe there's some Australian somewhere there. Okay. Yeah, and I've been involved in the community for a long time. I love going to conferences. I speak at a lot of them about hiring. So DEF CON, RSA multiple times, ISC Squared Security Congress. Oh boy, InfoSec World, B-Sides. Like anybody else that I haven't forgotten, sorry. But loads of places I'm lucky enough to go out and meet people face to face and have a discussion about my passion, which is all things cybersecurity hiring. I lead the industry advisory board for the National Cybersecurity Training and Education Centre. I'm on a couple of other advisory boards as well that really around producing the next set of talent to make sure that things like skills gaps are filled very quickly, and we make sure that we don't have a load of people retiring and none of these new people coming through. So anyway, that's my passion. Thank you so much for having me. Let's do it.
Yes, let's do it. Okay, so on the Queens, we always love to have people kind of tell how did they get started with cyber or how they got into the cyber function of their job, whether it's sales to cyber sales or recruiting to cyber recruiting. So you are not a practitioner, correct?
I'm not, but you might not know this. My very first-ish full-time job, actually out of school, was selling conference space, and I worked at Heathrow Airport. And Heathrow Airport had one on-site conference space. It was in the old Queen's building, and actually they had a sponsored IT area, like computer area, where people could send emails and stuff. Obviously, this was quite a long time ago. And so I ended up, because I was always passionate about technology, the IT manager had me as their little assistant. So although I was selling conference space, whenever we did anything IT related, they came and come and involved me. So I feel pretty at home with technology. I have just done the ISC2 certified in cybersecurity exam, and I passed it first time, which actually was way harder than what I thought. So I'm not a technician. I'm not a practitioner, but I'm really passionate about it. And over the last 12 years, I guess, a lot of osmosis has sunk in.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're someone who's always been like, I always regard you as a cyber person in my brain. Like, Kris is just part of the cyber community. And I realize I see you at all the practitioner conferences that I would normally be at. And you're like involved with like Cloud Security Alliance or Cloud Risk Alliance, I think.
Yeah,
And,
that's
but I'm like, but he's not a practitioner, but you went and got a cyber certification, which I think is so cool. That just shows you that anyone can do it at any time with enough dedication. Kris is right up on the CC coming soon. He promises. Anyway, okay, so we're going to get into the good stuff now. We're going to get there. We're going to go. So I think we're going to start off with a hot one, the job hopping paradigm. And what is that? And what does it mean? And we're going to discuss it. Stacey, you want to take us away?
Yeah. So, Kris, I'm curious, in this fast moving industry where it seems like every Monday there's a long list of people starting new jobs, new roles, new opportunities and whatnot. Should we always be on and open to new opportunities, or is there a certain tipping point where that might look negative in the eyes of potential future employers, thinking about situations where we might actually need to move quick, right? Like if there is a moment where there is a layoff or some type of situation, right? And so we're super curious for your perspective.
Yeah.
So it's funny, like actually in recruitment, it's been 25 years for me. So I started in tech recruitment before I did just cybersecurity. And the view has changed an awful lot in the last few years, right? Initially, it was to be job hunted. If you were a contractor, that explained any jumps in jobs, right? If you were full-time and you weren't doing at least 2 or 3 years each job, then you were a job hopper and you wouldn't get interviews, right? People wouldn't interview you. They just look at the resume and they feedback to us, no, this person doesn't stay for any length of time. We don't want to bring them on board, right? And times have changed a lot. I think I personally believe that you should always be open to having a discussion, and that's not because it's in my interest. I want you to answer my phone calls. This goes all about, I'm sure CISOs would prefer that their people below aren't continually looking for jobs. But there was a stat that I literally read last week where it said that 75% of CISOs are open to talking about a job. Oh, so if the CISOs are open to doing it, I think pretty much all of us should be, right? I have a very good friend of mine who's a deputy CISO at a very well-known company, and he actually, his boss knows that he interviews for a job externally at a different company once every year, always, at least once every year, because he wants to understand what his worth is in the market. He wants to understand what's out there, and that helps with a lot of things. That helps make sure that even when he's happy in his role, that he doesn't feel like, perhaps compensation isn't quite right, or perhaps he'll see things there that he can bring across and make his current job better, right? So I believe you should always be looking. There's one of my very first talks, I talked about the retention triangle is what I called it. And I talked about those 3 things, and this is continuous, 25 years of recruitment. There's always three different areas when people are looking to leave jobs, and it's either location, so commute, and again we're seeing those problems because people are being dragged back to the office. It's compensation, and the third one is job satisfaction. Now, if you have an issue in one of those areas, normally you'll stay, right? You'll stay in a job. When it gets to 2, you're almost certainly looking and you're on your way out. People very rarely get to 3. So those 3 are the 3 reasons you can usually put pins in for people leaving jobs. And that actually helps. If you want to retain your staff, you've got to know that you've got all of those 3 things as best as you can to keep those people happy. So yeah, I'm a believer that you should totally be open to work. And I think discretion is still nice, right? You don't want to make it look like you're leaving your current company. And I think honesty, if you've got a good manager and a good boss that you can have a discussion with that about, it's even easier to do this stuff and probably less likely to leave, right?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up retention because, as practitioners, we all get the DMs like, hey, I know you don't have a banner, but are you open to new opportunities right now? And, half the time I'm like, bug off. I'm really not, like, thank you. But sometimes I'm like, I don't know. Is the project interesting? Is the company cool? Tell me about it. And, I don't feel guilty. I feel like it's good to stay abreast of what's out there, because first of all, if I am laid off tomorrow, those are the things that it's kind of good to be constantly watering the ground. But I feel like if a company is going to be all uppity about you taking interviews and seeing what else is out there, and they don't focus on retention, like they're like, you're not allowed to leave. If you leave, you're disloyal, but they don't focus on trying to keep you happy or pay you adequately for your skills, then like they're kind of creating their own problem.
Yeah.
So you could solve your own problem quite easily just by valuing the people that you have and not having them do the job of 4 different people and letting them upskill and, little things like that we don't see very often.
Totally. I think the honesty factor that's the key with all of this, right? So if you're honest with the company that you're interviewing, say, look, I'm not really looking, but I'm open to having a discussion. Speak to your boss. Speak to the recruiter. If you're going through the recruiter, manage their expectations as well. That way you're not burning bridges by interviewing at a load of places. And also, not to forget, you're very busy people. Everybody's very busy. You don't want to constantly looking might not work, but there might be times and periods where you have a chance or something, just, give them 5 minutes. Let's see if there's something that touches a point there. Very rarely has anybody got 100% of what they need in their current role. Now, of course, you move somewhere else and that 100, it appears that you're getting that extra percent. That might not be happening either, right? Out of the frying pan into the fire. So you've got to ask lots of questions and just be aware of that. And
you could leave a safe opportunity for like oh God, I'm so glad I left opportunity.
Especially at the moment, right? The market is very strange. There, like you say, every week we're reading about layoffs. And initially there wasn't much of an impact in cybersecurity, but we're seeing more of an impact. And I think, like, if you think about like what's going on there, yes, you have to have options, you have to be aware, but you also have to look at where you currently work. How secure are you? If you leave for something that, is all sparkly and bright and looks amazing, and then they run out of funding, or, you're the last person in, you're being paid the highest, where are they going to look to cut costs? So you've got to bear all of those things in mind. There's a lot of things when you move jobs, you have to make sure you're making the right decision. But yeah, I think keeping open to it, you have to be.
Yeah, we have someone in the comments who says better the devil you know ? And is it always better the devil you know than the devil you don't? Like, is it worth staying somewhere where you're unhappy, even 1 or 2 of those pillars, like you said, to not risk somewhere you could be more unhappy?
Yeah, you have to look at, like, when I look at those pillars, like, let's take compensation, right? If your compensation is really, really bad, but the rest is really good, it's still quite hard to tear somebody out of that unless the money is going to truly make a difference to their life, right? Because, like, one thing the pandemic has shown, I've seen more people accepting jobs that weren't the highest offer than pre-pandemic. And that's because people value time with their families, right? They value a lot of other things. They value their own happiness over like what an extra $10,000 might make to them. So there's a lot of things to take in mind, take on point.
Yeah, there definitely is. And the last point I want to make before we move on to the next subject, because I know everyone wants to hear about applying to jobs, traditional raise models. Sometimes, in my opinion, like I've made astronomical career progress in the short time I've been in cyber, which is kind of what I'm known for. But I'm in the mid 6 figures now, and I wouldn't have been there if I hadn't continually taken new opportunities and gone to new organizations. So unfortunately, sometimes, and I was a single mom at the time. So I feel like if it defeats traditional raise models, right? If you want to make that money, if you want to get to those salary points where you can start putting yourself in a position of power to negotiate higher salaries and future opportunities, you have to take the new job sometimes, or you're just not going to get there with current organizations, with, current models being what they are.
Yeah, that's a good point. That brings up also like counter offers, right? That brings in the whole counter offer thing. So I do believe it is easier to move and go up, especially now. Many places will not allow you to tell them what you're currently earning. It's much easier to make jumps and be paid what you should be paid. However, I would say there are some companies that are breaking those traditional models and are continually trying to, push the levels up and push their pay bandings up. And the dangerous course is when they bring people in, they bring them in at more money, they talk, and then that causes more issues. So there's a lot of things that come around with compensation. I think when it comes to counter offers, you need to have covered as many of your bases before you have that counter offer conversation. So what I mean by that is, if you're leaving because there's something you don't like in the job, you should have had that discussion before you ideally started looking for another role. If your compensation's not enough, you should have already had that conversation.
Oh, you're saying don't suffer in silence. Bring it to their attention. Tell them I'm about to leave because I am this unhappy. Because a lot of people are afraid the second they open their mouth. I just had a conversation with someone about this yesterday, a mentee. They're afraid the second they open their mouth saying you don't give me good expectations, I'm frustrated in my job, let alone I'm not being paid enough, like they're just going to get fired anyway, or they're going to feel repercussions that put them in a place where they just want to quit because they can't take it anymore. And that still happens. So what's your advice there?
It does. So it's how you communicate. So if you turn around and say, I love this job, right? I love working here. I don't want to, I've not started looking. I don't want to look, but I've been sent emails with jobs that are paying 20% more, right? And I'm speaking to people, my friends I know in the market, and they're telling me it pays more. Or this part of the job I really don't like, and I'd like to be doing more of this. How can you do that for me? Because I don't want to interview. I'm not interested in going out and speaking to people. I want to get it right here because I love working here, right? So if you want to fix things, then that's how you need to communicate to make them feel like, wow, we've got a chance. And then if they don't deliver, they don't promise things and they don't deliver on the promises, when you get a job and then all of a sudden can say, oh, we can give you that extra money now, you know what kind of company you're working for, right? You're not working for a company that listens to you until they're scared about losing you. And to be frank, if they're scared about losing you, it's a short-term fix because in their head, they know they're going to lose you. And so they get you back, they bring you in. In the meantime, they're probably busy looking at what other options they've got, who can they move up, who can start taking some of those, some of the roles off you, stuff like that. So yeah, counter offers are really dangerous. There's a reason why people say don't take them, but the key is what you do before that to make sure that you've basically covered all your bases and done everything. And so it shouldn't be a surprise when you get a new job that has the thing that they've not delivered and they suddenly deliver it. It's not where you want to work.
Yeah. And so on the flip side of counter offers, right, we're talking about the danger of potentially accepting a counter offer from the place you're working at currently. What about on the other side of things where you are in the final stages of opportunity and, they put a salary before you that just quite isn't hitting the mark in regards to what you would be expecting for the role, what based off of all your interviews, you're coming to understand are the responsibilities of the role. And, especially too, I have an experience where I was interviewing for a place and ended up securing an offer with them. But the initial numbers they put out in front of me, it perspective, knowing what I knew about my discipline and insider risk management, it was really low. And so, the strategy that I usually employ is trying to figure out what are all the levers that we can pull in regards to total compensation. What is, not just the base pay, but the bonus pay and the opportunities for increases and our paid time off and stuff like that. And so, I pulled all the levers and provided options and ultimately was able to negotiate them up. Honestly, it was like 40-something% of the total package.
Right.
But I can also talk about another situation where another company put an offer in front of me. I said, this is great. We're almost there, really trying to partner with them and get us over the line. And like, if we could just maybe look at this area and this area and this area, what do you think we could make of this? And they turned around and said, oh, we think you wouldn't be happy here. We decided we're rescinding our offer and just walked away. Right. And so how do we handle that? What is your advice for people making those tough calls about negotiate or not to negotiate?
Yeah, because I always tell people to negotiate, especially after they've given the offer, counter offer, because it's very unlikely they'll just be like, oh, just kidding, you cost too much money or whatever. But I guess I've been proven wrong because now we have an example. So now I'm scared.
I mean, it does happen. Like if you have an independent party, this is where Recruit is quite useful, right? If you have an independent party, like it's quite easy for us to go, look, they really were looking for a little bit more money. They love the job, right? Again, it's a selling, you want to sell how bought into the company you are, but look, they love the job, but this really is a little bit low from what they were looking for. Like, and at this point, we're having the communication with the candidates. The candidate might say, oh, that really is low. I would accept it, but I don't really, it's not making them excited. And what you want is an offer that makes somebody excited for all of the reasons, right? And so it's how you handle, I think, that, you know, that discussion. And, you know, I want to work here. I'm excited about everything, but the numbers that we're talking about they're not really, you know, I'm probably going to get that here next year, or they're not really doing it for me. Like, what can we do to try and change this a bit? Can we work, as you said, look at all of the different factors. Can we work on this? Look, I know how hard I work. Can we make the bonus higher? You'd be surprised how many people can raise bonuses, right? And they might not be able to impact base pay, but they can other areas. So I think depending on how you handle it, that will help a lot. I think you should have the monetary discussions as early as possible. And when I say that, I mean just very broadly, right? Not how much exactly, that's down the line once you know you're going to get that offer, but that broad, well, what are they paying, right? What's the range? And then if they make an offer that's low down in that range, you can say, look, you gave me this range. This is where I see I'm at. I really would love this job, but, you know, what can we do to get closer to that? Right? And put it in their call and have it as a discussion. And with everything, just make sure, if you really want the job, make sure they know it. If they're the sort of company that really is going to turn around and say, well, no, sorry, you won't be happy here, you wouldn't be happy there. Listen to them, because that's how they're managing that discussion. That's not a nice way to manage that discussion. So yeah, thanks. You're absolutely right. I probably wouldn't be, right? So you know.
Tack is a part of it, though. Bronwyn Hudson. Hi, Bronwyn. She says good tack is also to ask prodding questions instead of making demands, too. So make sure you're always, you know, we've always got that aspect of class to what we're doing. You can argue effectively and stand up for yourself with some grace to it. Okay, we could talk about this forever. And in fact, I wrote down several more points. We might just have to have you come back. But we got to get to the application stuff, because the people want to know from someone who kind of works on the other side about the applying thing. So you know, we all know that if we apply to something, first of all, you see a LinkedIn job nowadays and 700 applicants have applied. And I told someone, holy crap, like, what do we do? How do we compete with that? And they were like, most of that are bots, and like, they're going to filter them out. I'm like, will they filter them out? What if they don't? What if I get lost? What if it thinks I'm a bot? So like, getting lost in the CMS and having your application and your resume and your cover letter that you painstakingly tailored go to a black hole that no one's ever going to look at. How can we overcome that? How can we stand our best chance? What are your best resume tips? Like, do we actually hide those keywords and turn them white and hide them in the background? Do we use metrics? Do we use that blurb at the top? Do we not use the blurb at the top? Bullets, not bullets, sentences, you know, like, give it to us. We want it.
So like, you can't get away from the CMS, because every company uses one. And now how much they use it and to what value completely depends on the recruiter, sometimes the company as well, but often the recruiter. So, you know, it might have ways of scoring you, you know, based on, you know, how many keywords you've got and things like that. And you might get a higher score. I firmly believe that although you're going to go through this, you want a resume that is built for somebody to read, right? Because if you even get through all of those like filters and everything else that happens, and then the resume looks terrible and it gets handed to the line manager and they're like, what is this? I don't want to interview that person, right? So have your resume built for somebody to read, right? Keep it clear, keep it, you know, short, depending on your experience, 2 or 3 pages, right? I'm a believer. Unless you're a grad, I don't think you know, if you really want to sell yourself, you're going to need more than 1 page, especially you don't want a tiny font. So I say
it's okay to go over pages.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah, I most of my clients will read. They'll definitely read a 2-page resume. They probably will read a 3-page as well with no problems. Once you get to 4, it's a bit difficult. Had somebody sent me a 55-page. I've told this story so many times. Yeah, literally 55-page resume. And I was like, what do I do with this? It was somebody very senior, and they were very proud of the resume, and it was so difficult to manage. And I had a conversation. I was like, oh, you know, this is I've got your resume here. Do you have do you just have one version of your resume, or do you have multiple versions? Oh no, I have multiple versions. So I was like, oh, is it possible to send me, like, how many versions you have? I've got one other version. Well, could you send me the other version as well? And I want to take a look at that. So here's me thinking, 55-page, loads, probably got 5 or 7 pager, right? Still too long, but sends me a 70-page resume. So the other resume was even longer.
that was their version of the tailored resume. So my only question is, has this person been working since like the computer was invented? Like, how do they have a resume this long?
They had been around.
Well, and my question Yeah, I was gonna say, is it a federal resume? Because we hear about in the federal government when you're moving roles and stuff, like they actually require you to list out every single little detail, right? And so
Oh, a
that's
military
where
thing.
my thinking's
Yeah.
going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there was an element. There was a little bit of an element of that. Some government work. There was some contracting work as well, and the person had been in the industry for a long time. But
Okay.
55 pages is like, if it had been the last 5 years, it'd have probably been a 7-page resume, which is still too long. But
Yeah.
like, who cares what you were doing 22 years ago?
Yeah.
Right?
I only leaned on a lot of those when I was like, I didn't have much to demonstrate on my resume. So I'd throw all my military experience on there and anything that could demonstrate that you could trust me with this job. Nowadays I do keep like a 4-page version of my resume with everything built out, because certain contracts that I'm on, I work for a federal contractor. They want to know every job that I've had since like college. And some people just want to know, the jobs that I've had up to the last 10 years, which is, I'm 34. So, or 35 now. Oh God, I had a birthday. So, that's like a lot of jobs, but I always keep like the end all be all version of the resume. And then I'm like, okay, so for this position, I'm just going to highlight these 3 things. And then everything else is like a line item, like an honorable mention. Also titles that I held, but not so important to this. So
perfect. Take them out.
Yeah, I chunk it down every time, but I start out with like the 7-page version.
Yeah, I think good to have a generic resume that maybe is 2 or 3, and then have a resume with everything in, where you can almost like pull, like a modular thing, right? You pull that, for this job, this is more relevant. Let me pull that in. This isn't relevant. And so then you can always move your resume around and have it relevant to the job. That's a big thing, like make it relevant to the job you're applying for. Throw enough stuff at the wall and see what sticks, right? That doesn't work that well. You just lose the important stuff that's in your resume already. And so I would absolutely say that, like, just be very careful about what you're putting in it, and don't concentrate too much about the filtering. There are issues with filtering. There are issues with, not really with the system, right? The system does mostly what people ask it to do or what it's been set up to do. And so the issue is training within those people, within talent acquisition teams that know nothing about cyber. And that's not their fault, because one job they're working on is cyber, the other one is for the accounts team. And, it's the problem is finding the time, but the good hiring managers spend time with the talent acquisition, trying to get them to understand what they're filtering for. And they take examples, right? Show me some resumes that you said no to, right? Why did you say no to them? Why did they get filtered out? And you make sure that you're tailoring it down to get the right people in. What I will say is, I spoke to a hiring manager, was very proud to tell me they'd had 700 resumes and they'd filled the position within a month, and they hadn't looked at one of the resumes. They've got 7 recommendations and they'd hired somebody from the recommendations. So that is the secret to finding a job, right? The worrying about the CMSs and stuff. By the way, once you're on the database, a lot of these companies don't do very good jobs of searching their own database to find people for new jobs.
They always go for the new. They always go look for the new.
You just put another advert out, right? They just put another advert out and see who comes in, and because those people are looking, right? If they have to reach out to everybody in their database, maybe they've got jobs, maybe they haven't. And so being on a database, it's really about connecting with people, networking, like getting recommendations. And yes, at some point you might have to be on that database, or you might be added to it, but that isn't where you want to put your time. That's not the most valuable use of your time when you're looking for a job.
So is
now.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so personally, I was team generic resume for the longest time. I had one resume, and that was the thing I submitted to everything. But in my recent job search cycle, I came across this tool called Teal. And now I'm going to be clear, like, we're not sponsored by Teal. I think I would love to be sponsored by Teal. I found a ton of use out of it in my last job search cycle. But what made it so helpful was that you could plug in all of your bullet points for every job, whether you were going to use those bullet points on the resume you were going to generate or not. You just have them all in there, have all that information. And then you could also import the job description for the job which you were applying for, and tier what you're talking about, the different skills that you toggle on for your custom tailored resume to that job job description, and then you could export it. So that way it made like, it wasn't like, you know, you're cutting and pasting and figuring out like, oh, did I just save the wrong resume file or whatever. It's just a simple like toggle system. And I found that to be super helpful. And I do think that tailoring my resumes to these jobs that I was applying for did ultimately give me a competitive edge. But just like, it's almost like misplaced concern or time or whatnot, where we focus too much on like tailoring the perfect resume, making sure our bullet points or whatever, when the reality is what really matters is having the perfect conversation. It's finding people to talk to and being able to really in those moments sell yourself, you know, in a one-on-one conversation with someone who could be either your, you know, potential hiring manager or someone who knows someone who could be your potential hiring manager.
Totally. I did a talk at DEF CON called Pwn Your Resume a few years ago. It's on YouTube, so you can Google that and find it. And actually, one of the things I talked about is this, it's just a piece of paper to get you the conversation. That's all it is, right? It's a piece of paper to get you to start, to maybe be part of that conversation, but it just gets you talking so they can ask you the questions. Your job is just to get your foot in the door, and that's what it's doing for you. So 100%, you mentioned that product, but I'm sure, I've not tried it, but I bet now you could probably upload your current resume if you want to share that data, right? But you might be able to upload your current resume, the job description, and just say, rewrite my resume for this job to most probably AI systems, and they'll probably do a half decent job, I would imagine, and I'm sure they'll get better and better at it. So I do think there's less excuses in terms of the amount of time it takes to keep writing that resume each time now, because I'm sure there's much more efficient ways of doing that, and probably not necessarily things that you have to spend a lot of money on to do. So, which I know when people are out of work is one of the toughest things, right? It's really, you have to really start justifying, right, I'm going to, you know, everything now is like, okay, I'm going to spend $15 a month on this, right? It's always a month, and you have to sign up for a minimum of 12 months. And, oh, I only need to use it once. I'm hoping I need to use it this month. Yeah. So, you know, everybody wants the SaaS revenue coming in. So there's a lot of things you have to bear in mind. I think there's a lot of probably available information out there, as long as you know that free isn't really free. As everybody in our industry knows, right? Are you willing to give up what you need to not have to spend money on something?
Can have it good, fast, or free, but you can't have all three of them.
Indeed.
Yeah. Okay. So in your opinion, just to recap this point before we move on. So you're saying that the most effective thing to do is not necessarily to tailor a bunch of resumes and submit a bunch of applications, but it's rather to have those conversations and to network with the people who might recognize your skills and funnel them into the right opportunities.
Yeah. If you have to make a choice on where to put your time, put it into networking, put it into applying, like instead of applying for 400 jobs, which is why a lot of these jobs have a huge amount of applications. And most of the time, you know, when you see those applications, I think we had 270 applications for one job in 2 days, 48 hours. 250 of them were basically asking, oh, can we work remote? Well, it said in the job description it wasn't remote. They weren't looking for within the salary range that was actually in there. So a lot of these things are just, they're not bots, but they're automated and an automated approach to sending out job descriptions. And so, you know, getting the connections and knowing that somebody's actually taken the time to read it and is reaching out to you is much better time spent for a hiring manager or even a talent acquisition person, if you can catch them. That's the key. So yeah, that's where you want to put your time.
Okay. What about, really quickly, cover letters? Your opinion on them? How effective are they? Always write one. Don't bother writing one.
So when you apply for a job, you send your application in. I don't think anybody reads a cover letter, right? I think that's a complete waste of time. I don't think it gets read. If you're sending a personal LinkedIn message to someone, that's your cover letter, right? That what you write in that message, or even if you manage to get somebody's email address, not that hard, right? Especially with what we do, and you can send an email directly to who you think the hiring manager is. That is your cover letter, right? What you write in that email, they will open up and read. If you have two documents attached and one's cover letter and the other one's resume, they'll probably just open your resume, right?
So sneak them into the same PDF. That's the trick.
You can, but then all of a sudden, if they open it up and it says 5 pages, they might be like, "Oh." I think for me, if I'm selling a candidate into a client and I'm really excited about them, the email is where I do that. I get it down to 1 paragraph, why I think this person is an amazing fit, why they must check out the resume, why if they've got any questions, they need to come back to me and ask, right? I get that all in a short paragraph and that goes in the email, and they will read that because they asked me about it and they spend a bit more time. That paragraph gives you the difference between them quickly opening your resume and shutting it, and maybe open your resume and spend an extra 2 seconds, which might be all it takes to see a word on there or a line or something that's like, that's what I'm after. Or even that wasn't even in the job description, but clearly they know that it goes in line with what's in the job description, because actually you're right, I should have put that on there. Let me look at this person. So, sometimes you can put relevant stuff that isn't in the job description.
I like that.
Yeah, it's definitely, thinking ahead of that person who's on the other side, and recognizing that we are a society of skimmers, and that we do not want to
scroll your resumes.
We are, yes. So we do not want to read big chunks of text. Almost like, gosh, you could use, if you're in like social media marketing or whatnot, like these are the basics that like LinkedIn posts and stuff like that. Like do 1 sentence on a line at a time. Think about the user experience for your hiring manager when they're looking at it on their phone. Make it easy for them to easily identify the key your selling point so that they're inclined to open. But yeah, overall, I will not apply to a place if they are trying to require me to provide a cover letter, because it just goes back to the power dynamics we're witnessing and experiencing today about, before a candidate is even working for a company, they are expecting a candidate to go above and beyond for them, versus like keeping it realistic to the 2 sides, right? Keeping it the level of effort that I put in versus the level of effort that you're going to put in relative to the opportunity. Like, let's keep this point. Don't expect me. And guilty as charged, right? Like, if people who follow me, you probably saw at one point a certain company wanted me to do a project plan to
an entire vulnerability plan, an entire vulnerability management program.
And this was a like very prevalent in all of our lives company. So I thought to myself, if these people are doing it, and the way, the people at the company talked to me, it sounded very much like, because this is kind of like a new domain for you, like we just want to like make sure that you can speak articulately about it, right? So I did it, and sure enough, it was just like how every other story ends when these kinds of things go on. I basically got the cold hard, no feedback email, impersonal rejection, right? And so we just like got to bring ourselves back down to earth about the time that we're spending on these, and being very thoughtful with where we are devoting our time, because it is easy to get caught up in the, well, let me just submit 100 applications, play the numbers game, because it's just easier, right? At the end of the day, like, especially if you are more of like an introverted type person, it can be exhausting to go and have all these conversations, but it's really in those conversations where you're going to net a better return.
Yeah. And we get it. Circumstances will always be different. Some people have to take the job. They have to take the shitty job. They can't qualify the employer. They can't ask these difficult questions. Sometimes we got to use things as a stepping stone and have an exit strategy. We know that some of you out there, we're at a nice mid-level point in our careers where we can be choosier. That was not always the case. So just know that we see you and we recognize your struggle, and this advice might not necessarily apply to you. Just worth a call out. Okay. So we are coming up to the 40-minute marker, which means, as fun as this episode has been, we're going to have to wrap it up soon, quite sadly. So I'm going to do something fun we've never done before. I'm going to ask you 10 rapid fire questions, and all I want is a simple yes or no, this or that answer. with no explanation. We're going to probably use this as the episode recap. And then we'll move into final takeaways. So be thinking about your final takeaways, anything you want to impart on the audience, any lasting advice for those people out there applying to jobs or anything else. All right, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. Resumes, metrics or no?
Yes, metrics.
Hidden keywords or no?
No hidden keywords.
Job descriptions with metrics or just metrics?
Job descriptions with metrics.
Apply directly or talk to a recruiter?
Talk to a recruiter.
Ideal resume length, 3 pages, more or less?
Less.
3
or less.
All right. Format, photo or no?
No photo.
Complex or no? Meaning like different layouts or simple document?
No, very simple.
Very simple. Cover letter or no? Cover
No.
letter or no?
No cover letter.
Self-identify or no? Meaning veteran, disabled, gender, etc.
Yes. Self-identify 100%.
Negotiate after the offer more often than not, yes or no?
I really want to explain why.
This is number 10. Go ahead and explain. This is number 10. Go ahead.
Okay, all right, yeah. Because I want to say it depends. Because if you really, really love the job, and the money is in and around what you were hoping for, don't negotiate just for the sake of negotiating. That's what I would say. Have
qualified it kind of before you get to that point and know if you're prepared 100%. To negotiate or if you're prepared to accept. Okay.
Yeah, you have to have the question I have when I speak to somebody is I say to them, right, are you willing? Are you basically going to stand on that hill, right? Are you saying to me you're going to say no at that number? And if they're like, then I'm like, okay, well then let's just think about this. We can push. My job is to push, right? So most of the time I do negotiate, but I've had years of doing it, and I do it in a way that's quite soft, and I get a feel, and I even know before the offer comes whether there's probably room in there already. So I know, and I have a feel for it. That's what I would say. I just say be very careful about standing on a hill where you always say I will always negotiate, or I always won't. You really got to weigh up.
I always try to qualify it well enough before we get there. I'm like, what's your ideal rate? So that I know if you under offer me, I've got room to negotiate. But I really only negotiate if I'm under offered, and that's been very rare. So I usually get offered over what I'm asking for because I don't price myself accurately.
That's how we tell our clients, right? You want to give somebody that makes them excited. So if they're thinking of this and you come here, you want them to say yes. You want them to not be able to get off the yes, just yes. Don't finish your sentence. Yes, right?
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to move into final takeaways now. This is anything you want to impart on the audience. Kris, I'm going to ask you to go first. And we have a question. So can you work in an answer to, do you recommend the candidate follow up with the recruiter after applying or just send cold messages? So your final takeaway plus an answer to that question.
Okay. So I'm going to combine the both because I think it's all about networking. I've created a career networking and meeting people. And so you absolutely follow up. You follow up after your interviews. You try and get emails, thank them for their time. I think it's all about communication and connecting with people. So you absolutely do follow up with the recruiters, follow up with the line managers as well if you can, even if that's just it was really lovely to meet you. Hopefully we'll get to the next step. If there's anything, I think at the end of the interviews, my big tip is is there anything that you didn't see from me? Any things that aren't fits to what you're looking for? And that gives you a chance to maybe go back into your experience and bring something out that you didn't discuss. Last thing is you get an email. Most of the time, as you say, the rejections are just a letter that don't give you any information, right? But every now and then you'll be nice enough to get a reason why it's a no. And there's nothing more frustrating than hearing why it's a no and then be like, but I did this at this job and we just didn't discuss it, right? So just try your best. People aren't always going to tell you, but at the end of the interview, ask them, how have I done? Is there anything that I haven't covered or anything that you think I might struggle with this role that I can recover now?
I love that. And I love especially that we all know I'm an overly tenacious person, but I've often said the same thing. I've told people that in interviews, I've literally said when they're like, what questions do you have for me? I'm like, yeah, great. So, we told a lot of anecdotes today and is there a specific quality or a specific capability that you're looking for this role that I haven't demonstrated? Because if not, I want to take this time to do that. I want to make sure that where I stand on that thing. And oftentimes they're like, oh, that's a great question. Yeah, you didn't really address this. And I'm like, perfect, I'm going to do that now. So I love that you said that. We didn't even discuss this beforehand. I swear we didn't.
True.
Stacey, your takeaways next.
Yeah. So, gosh, with the pandemic, it's become clear that there's more to life than the money, right? And so to spend time and effort chasing a bump in salary every couple of years, under the sheer of like, well, I've been in this role for a while and now I believe I deserve more, and I'm gonna go out there and try to get the next thing. If you're at a company that is taking care of you, that you feel safe at, that you've got great work-life balance at, my takeaway would just be to think twice before making a move, and really draw out that pro and con list, bringing in all the variables beyond just the salary. Because sure, a company can waive, $10, $20, $30, $50,000 more in front of you, but at what cost could that come at? And so I think the points today around thinking through all of the other aspects of a job offer and your compensation package and whatnot should really be underscored in today's day and age, where that that feeling of safety and security in many companies is fleeting. And we have evidence all over LinkedIn and the internet and the news stories of, all these companies that many people once put at the top of their list are failing to properly plan for their resourcing and their talent, and are caught in these cycles of layoffs. What would you give to not have a layoff looming over your head? Would that be 10,000, 20,000? Honestly, for me, that very much went into my selection with the employer that I've started with recently. It's not a big flashy name. It's not something you've probably heard of, but when you look at the stability that they can offer me with where I am at as a mid-level professional at this point, like, it is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. And my advice is, that segues very nicely into my advice. My advice is going to be to job hunt like a hacker, right? And again, I know this won't apply to those of you out there who have to take the bad job, the small org, the crappy manager, maybe the values that suck. But for those, I say have an exit strategy. And if you're not finding yourself there, know what's valuable to you in an offer. For me, my base salary is more important than any type of bonus and or RSUs and or commission that I could get, because that's just what I value. So know what type of offers are going to be attractive to you and what you're willing to take. But then also, I say, again, job hunt like a hacker. If I'm looking at a new org, I don't want to be worried about a layoff, and I don't want to be worried about hating my team, because people will leave great work and great companies if they work with shitty people, and they'll stick around shitty companies if they work with great people. So I talk to people on my team in different departments. I DM them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I see you work at this company. I'm interviewing. Do you like your life? Do you like your leadership? Do you like your job? How's the work-life balance? And I make sure they're happy. I also look to see if they've done any layoffs recently, or how quickly they've expanded certain tech departments, to make sure that that won't be me. So just go in with some savvy under your belt. Hopefully you're not at the position where you have to take whatever lands in your lap. Hopefully you can make intelligent choices, but if so, then please do that. With that, thank you so much for spending your Friday with us for almost 50 whole minutes, which is way longer than we normally go. We so appreciate you. We love all the great comments we saw. I'm going to get in there and reply to all of you here in a minute. We the Queens, thank you for spending your Friday with us. We wish you all the best of luck out there in your cyber and general job application journeys. We will see you next Friday.
Thank you, everybody. Add me on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, Kris, tell the good people where they can find you. They can find you on LinkedIn.
I'm all on LinkedIn. You'll find me on Twitter, but it's just a repeat of whatever I write on LinkedIn. I'm terrible at getting... Oh, sorry, I should call it X as well. Does anybody call it X?
I don't know. I don't call it X. I still call it Twitter because I suck.
Anyway, LinkedIn, that's where you'll find me. Lots of exciting things happening this year. And I'm solving candidate experience and empowering talent acquisition. New service coming.
So if this is you, this is you follow Kris and spam Kris and tell him he should come back and do an interview episode with us. We'll do interviews next time.
I'd be happy to. This has been amazing.
Yay! Thank you. We love that. All right, we'll see you for the rest of season 2. Bye.